Welcome back to Conservation Conversations. It's a pleasure to be here again. We've got another very special guest for you from the Manchester Folk Festival, Billings. This is a member of a band who are playing later this month, very soon, and I can't encourage you strongly enough to go grab your tickets. It's a band I've been following for a long time and even covered some of their songs in a separate project of mine. It's Ollie here from Stornoway, and thanks for everyone for tuning in. A quick news update. We've got the Royal Albert Hall show at the end of this month on the 30th. The venue have asked us to remind you that there are still a couple of the very special, really high visibility tickets available. There appears to be have been a bit of a reselling going on. So a while ago, we posted about there being only the sort of most distant restricted view seats available, and then the choir seats came online. Now it appears that there's a handful available in the stores. So if you missed out early on, just take a look at the venue's website. You might be in luck. And I wanted to also remind you that that show is done in collaboration with Hayden Thorpe, who's our support act for that, singer from the band Wild Beasts, who was such an inspiration to Stornoway back in the day. Can't wait to meet Hayden on the night and play with him. And he sang at one of the Nightingales events that Sam Lee hosted last April. That's how I caught up with Hayden last. If you haven't been to one of the Nightingales shows, then you are in luck, because Stornoway are playing two of them in April, 15th and 16th. That's Friday and Saturday, if I've got the dates right. Come along to Bedfordshire or Sussex and see us in the middle of the woods, hiking with music accompanying us to go visit the Nightingales. It's one of the most beautiful nature music experiences I've ever had, is going out into the woods there with Sam and his crew. And now we're getting to lead our own version of that. And then one last other update before I bring in my fantastic guest is just to remind you that this Conservation Conversation series is a partnership with Sound Roots and the Folk on Foot groups, who are hosting the Folk Album of the Year Award. That's this month on the 17th of March. You can tune in live from the Rochdale Town Hall, where they are going to be sharing and announcing the winners of the first ever UK Folk Album of the Year award. So tune in live. And then 3 days later, if you're coming to Manchester Folk Festival, where the whole idea for this podcast came about, I'll be there on Friday 17th. I'm performing solo, and I can't wait to share some trad songs with you. But yeah, there's your news update. So much going on in Stornoway world at the moment, and lots more exciting news to come. So stay tuned. But without further ado, here's my guest. This is from the wonderful Shovel Dance Collective, their band member, Oliver. Welcome, Oliver. It's nice to have another Oliver on the call, because after about 50 guests, I've actually never had one. So from one Ollie to another.
Thank you.
How are you doing today? And I understand you're kind of speaking on behalf of the whole. How are the rehearsals going for the Manchester show coming up?
Yeah, they're going well, thank you. We've got some we spent a lot of the later part of last year finishing off recording our record. So that's been the main focus. So it's been really nice this February, January and March, actually starting to think, even though the songs that we've recorded onto this record will be new to people listening in Manchester, we've actually started working on some new material. We were lucky enough to go to Leuven in Belgium on a residency. So we were there for 3 days, and we performed a show at the end, and also ran a workshop, and we got to work on some new material. So yeah, we've been rehearsing for the festival, but also hopefully we'll have a few new pieces to play, which will be very new for us, not just new for the listeners. Yeah.
That's really exciting for me to hear as a fan of shovel dance. We went to Leuven back in probably 2008. One of the first excursions Stornoway made out to folk festivals on the continent. And really? Leuven struck me as a town where they had a festival. I think it was called Leuven Festival, and it was folk music, but also a lot of modern stuff as well. But did you get a sense when you were doing the residency that it's a bit of a hub for creative people?
I felt it was an interesting town. That's interesting to hear, because where we were in a place called Stuck, which was the this amazing building, which I think the university sort of owns or runs in Leuven, and they've got about 3 performance spaces in there, lots of rehearsal spaces, lots of volunteers, lots of different artists, and we were the kind of artists in residence there. So in that space, it felt really exciting. It was great. Outside of that, it was a very studenty town. We saw lots and lots of students on bikes, all of them on bikes all the time, which was great. So I know I did, but I didn't get a sense of like a wider folk scene when I was there. But we were very kind of in the Stuck artist residency space when we were there.
Yeah. Oh, well, maybe it's time for another visit by Stornoway at some point. We were trying to plot a map of potential venues for a cycle tour, tour by bike, because there's on one hand the motivation to do something green and tour in, say, an electric vehicle. It's surprisingly hard to do that, or tour by foot. I think it was Filkins Drift who pioneered that. They're a folk duo who walked something like 300 miles across the Welsh coastline, stopping in at pubs and doing gigs. We wanted to sort of do something in between and tour by bike. We wouldn't be the first to do it, but we would want to string together, preferably in a sort of flat terrain with not too many hills, because I'm going to have my double bass on my back.
You're going to cycle with a double bass?
Well, I've met a couple of bassists who do this. One of our fans is called Bicycling Bassist, and he's been all over the world to doing exactly that. So might have to be a half size or quarter size one. But,
sure.
Yeah, we'll make it happen.
Very impressive.
So Leuven is on the list, and I wanted to. Well, we'll get to this later, but I'll be asking you about locations where you've seen music performed, and it's perhaps an unusual space that brings in nature or people's experience of coming somewhere new for the first time to experience music. But firstly, I wanted to ask you about with relation to Shovel Dance Collective. What is a shovel dance, and how did you guys come up with the name and cohere as a group in the first place?
So the name is taken from an early folk song we used to sing in English, Biker Hill and Walker Shore, and it's there's a line in that of I forget. You know what? It's been so long, and I'm not the vocalist, so I don't want to get it wrong, but I think it's slap the piggy with a shovel and watch it dance to jig or something like this. It's one of those slightly coarse, old school folk things. But yeah, this kind of a shovel dance, and then the collective is that's part and parcel of kind of our politics, I suppose, and how we function as a group. It's not a collective in that lots of people kind of join and go at different points. It's a fixed group, but how we operate is a kind of a non-hierarchical structure. So that's where the collective one came in, and the shovel dance is just the words from that song that we always thought, and it stuck.
Brilliant. That is one of the famous folk songs, and many people have played it. But have you been to Biker Hill itself, the place?
I've not actually, no.
There's not to be confused with Biker Grove in Newcastle, but Biker Hill is from a tradition of places that have been written about and sung about in such beautiful ways. The Shovel Dance Collective song that I'm most familiar with, I think because it was the first one I encountered, and then I learnt it, and it took me on an adventure of learning a few others that you've done. Many's the Night's Rest, which I know goes by so many other titles, but I'm sure that on your released version, it's called Many's the Night's Rest, and it's just such a kind of haunting, lilting song. And just thank you for that and the inspiration it brought.
Thank you.
Apart from Manchester, have you got other shows coming up? And
just after Manchester, we're playing Oxford and Ipswich are the next. So we've kind of incorporated two other places.
Excellent.
Which we're doing Oxford on the Saturday and then Ipswich on the Sunday.
Excellent. I think Oxford's definitely on my radar there, because Stornoway's based there, and we'd love to come see you guys. The Oxford Folk Festival has just come back online after a year or possibly 2 years out of action. So that's happening in April, and some of our friends are starting to get booked for that. But yours is a bit earlier, right? Part of the same March tour. And do you know where you're playing in Oxford?
Not off the top of my head, I'm afraid. I've got the on my Google Calendar on the right. I could find out very quickly though. Maybe I'll do that.
Got it. That'd be great. Thanks. We love the venues in Oxford. There's a great diversity in different places, and what a great music scene. It was recently confirmed as the UK's rock capital per capita.
Oxford, really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Oxford has put out more record sales and bands who go out and tour internationally than Manchester, London, Liverpool per capita. So it's quite a small place that punches above its weight.
That's amazing.
And that's over the course of about 30 years that the survey or the research was conducted.
Wow.
So.
Good on you, Oxford. we're playing at the Nest.
Yeah, brilliant. That's a brand new venue set up by an organization that was called the Young Women's Music Project, which was all about diversifying and including many more sort of demographics than you typically see in live music.
So, wow.
Yeah, really wonderful
progressive
space. Yeah. And they got some really good investment. They did a crowdfunder. Lots of music fans locally and internationally got involved. Oxford's got an interesting relationship with international patronage. You got music fans who are nowhere near Oxford and barely ever visit, but they'll happily donate hundreds of pounds to save the venues there. And it creates this interesting dynamic where they can sustain certain aspects of the musical heritage more easily than some other towns, perhaps.
Yeah, I know that feels like a very different situation to where we are in London at the moment.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Excellent. Well, well, I'm going to dive into my first conservation question then for you, Oliver. It's the one about, as mentioned earlier, about conservation in the ecosystem sense or the natural sense. Our band's all about biodiversity and actually singing about it explicitly in our lyrics. So we've got songs like We're the Battery Human, which tell people to go outside, away from their screens, and go and reconnect with the natural world. I wanted to ask about if there's a place that you, as Shovel Dance Collective, have visited or interacted with. Maybe Leuven is on the list of these that you'd want to talk about, but a place that particularly brings nature in as almost a collaborator in the experience of writing music or enjoying music.
Yeah, quite a few we're lucky enough to have gone on tour quite a bit, so there's quite a few places that stand out. In terms of often I find myself with Matteo, who is the singer in the group, and we always have a feeling, if you get to a venue and you've maybe before the sound check and you're waiting, or you're just after the sound check and you've been in the tour van the whole time, then you're going immediately inside, and it could just be quite a claustrophobic sort of space in a way. You've been in there for a long. We always try and find our way just to kind of walk out. So sometimes, in the middle of, might be in the middle of town, maybe Newcastle, we're just sort of walking over it's in the middle of, but we were lucky enough in a place called Krems in Austria, where when we went for this walk, immediately we kind of got out of the town so quickly, and you're just in this beautiful Austrian countryside with these, where they would have grown, where they make wine. So they've got these vineyards on these different levels, and it was kind of euphoric, actually, just to be able to leave all of these indoor spaces that you find yourself in as a touring band all the time, and then you were out there, and then because you could climb quite high quite quickly, the views were just amazing. Seeing I've forgotten the name of the main river in Austria. It runs through Vienna as well, I think. Our friend Nick, the other singer, swam in that river in the morning before our show as well. So these kind of, it's those moments on tour that you have you find yourself having a really close, it's more sparse, the relationship with nature, but kind of closer, because when you're doing it, it feels euphoric.
Yes. Whenever we're touring, we try to get out for a hike somewhere along the motorway. if it's that desperate a situation, you just need some fresh air. And luckily, Brian, our singer, knows a lot of the trails around the UK and in the States, because he hiked the Appalachian Trail a long time ago, and that inspired some of the music we've done. So we've hiked in a few different places, but it does mean getting up super early to create the space of an extra hour or two before you have to be at the venue for sound check. So vineyards, that's the first guest of mine to mention vineyards, or even any sort of agricultural landscape. That's interesting. I'm going to have to add potentially some vineyards to our next tour itinerary. we are touring not touring, but we're just going out to do something, a one-off event in France in August. So we might be able to, pop by somewhere suitable. But thank you for that inspiration. Right. And then I wanted to talk about conservation in the other sense that for anyone who's been following this series of talks for the past year or so, has now become obvious that relationship between conservation, not just in the environmental sense, but in the musical sense, because I'm talking mostly to folk acts who play trad songs on traditional instruments, and we talk all the time about blending the old and the new. So Oliver, what's your favorite example, or on behalf of the Shovel Dance Collective, what's their favorite example of fanning the flames of tradition whilst creating a space for innovation musically?
It's a really, I might try and take the question into it's connected, but I was really inspired personally, and I've spoken to other people in shovel dance about this. When I went to he's called Stephen Thompson, who makes bows. He's based in London, in Deptford, so quite nearby. So he's fixed up my bows before, and I've just bought a new bow from him. And hearing him talk, obviously a lot of these instruments that we use, they're incredibly old, especially something like a violin, a cello, these kind of, but always it's getting repaired during its lifetime, and always these kind of slightly, when he's talking about how he built this particular bow, it came from an old bow, but then I can actually show it to you. I've got it here.
Oh yeah, thank you.
So this part of the frog, if you like,
Yes,
kind of thing. So this was broken. So he went, and these are from shells on Dorset Beach.
Wow.
Which is pressed into and then so it all comes from different parts of the world. I know this is it's obviously horsehair,
Yeah.
Which I think is not from the UK, but yeah, it's that kind of you're having to kind of, and I know Jackin is also the banjo player for our group, who makes banjos as well. So, but making them in the style of, but with slightly new modifications of an old Appalachian style banjo. When we were in Leuven, she had enough space to bring along both of her banjos. So there were two different styles, one of which she made. So, and that plays into the music all the time. We've got Josh plays the dulcimer, who's our percussionist, but he's not playing it in strictly the right traditional old school manner. There's experimentation with how he's playing with it, the sticks that he's choosing to use. So that plays into how our musical exploration, but it's I thought maybe a shout out to the actual instruments and the tools that we use might be an interesting kind of conservation idea.
So yeah, a unique answer, but I think it's so appropriate because in this new time where we can make music on objects that are so new, they've only just been created, or they don't even have a physical form, such as an AI composition program. It's a nightmare situation for a lot of musicians who are used to having treasured a piece of physical musical equipment. One of my about 6 months ago, Rachel Samani gave a really interesting response on this. She said that the first piano lesson that she'd ever had, the piano teacher came in and said, "We're not going to touch the piano during this lesson. We're going to spend an hour looking at the piano and talking about where all the parts of it come from. Every part of this instrument was once alive and went through, made of."
And I think we don't really do enough of that with some of the pianos, traditionally classical instrument, violin, fiddle in the folk setting. But so a lot of when you're learning these instruments, you don't actually have that relationship with them. They're just sort of things that are put into your hand, and you're kind of just doing it. I know the piano as well, so I can kind of relate to that. I play the piano, so I can relate to that idea. But it's as soon as I went to the luthier for the first time, who maybe started taking apart the violin, I was like, "Oh, what's going on in there?" And he's like, "Oh, do you want to know how old it is?" I was like, "Yeah, okay." And I had no idea about any of this kind of history and the story. Like, this wood has been around for about 150 years, and 120 of that it's been as part of this violin.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And so those stories I find really, and then what I'm doing with this piece of wood now that might have been different from what people have been doing with this violin previously.
Yeah, as a double bass player, trying to think about it as so more often than I would otherwise. I try to make an active effort to kind of relate to the instrument, and getting the hair replaced on the bow is always a situation where you're like, well, where does this hair come from, and
Yeah,
what was the
exactly.
journey that it made from here. Well, thanks for your really interesting answer there. I wanted to mention a particular album of yours. So, with The Water is the Shovel of the Shore, one of the most beautiful album titles, surely. And that's from Shovel Dance Collective. So, if anyone out there has not yet heard Shovel Dance's music, I'd say go start with that one. That's one that really hooked me at first. And a lot of the songs are seaside songs, would you say? So, Bold Fisherman. You've got the other traditional ones are, what was on there? The Drowned Sailor, Lowlands. There's so many songs called Lowlands, but obviously,
it's been such a while ago. Rolling Wave is on there, an early version of that as well, actually, which we call something a bit different. Charleston was the last Nick song. Yeah, I need to get that album up. Actually, it's been I've forgotten some of the titles.
Well, is there plans for another release or any like new versions of past collections coming up?
New versions of past collections, I don't know. I mean, we hope the idea is to release this record we've just finished in the autumn of this year.
Excellent.
And I don't want to give too much away, but it's if you looked at our 2 albums beforehand, the first one is part of like there are tracks, but it's part of a wider soundscape at points, and it's relating very clearly with the Thames the whole way. I mean, we hardly gave it track number. It was almost in 4 parts, I think. Whereas the one after that was more like, I suppose, a classic studio album, tracks to there. And I think maybe this upcoming one is sitting sort of in between those 2 places. That's
okay. That's really exciting. Thank you. Can't wait to get my hands on that new collection. Wanted to start to wind down by reminding everybody, please do go see Shovel Dance Collective on the 20th of this month in Manchester. So it's part of the Manchester Folk Festival. A lot of people will be in town for the English Folk Expo, which happens at the same time and is also really exciting and good excuse to get a wristband that shows you lots of different artists. And most of my guests in the recent months have been people who are featured on the bill there. So you guys are playing, remind me where it is on the 20th? Halle St. Peters? No, Band on the Wall, isn't it?
It was one of those. Halle St. Peters.
Halle St. Peters, that's the one. Okay.
Want to get that right.
Yeah. Really excited to see you there. And yeah, thanks very much for this fascinating conversation. Do you have anything else you want to let the audience know about?
No, I think those 2 upcoming gigs, those 3 upcoming gigs, then we've got a few others in different. We've got another small tour going on later on, which will be in the southwest of Bristol, Stroud, and Falmouth. And we've also had announced for those listeners from Norway, on the 29th of May, we'll be playing in Bergen.
Brilliant. Is that a part of a festival?
That's part of a festival.
Yeah.
So yeah, Norway 29th, 1st, 2nd, 3rd of May, Southwest.
Excellent. I think from memory, that's one of the most fun festivals we've ever played, certainly.
Really?
In Bergen, because you do get a bit of downtime to explore, and you can go up to the hilltops on a funicular, I think I seem to remember is there. So yeah, Bergen's really good fun. Enjoy.
Oh, we'll do. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Oliver. And everybody, thank you so much for tuning in on this Tuesday night, giving us your time. Wishing you all the best. See you soon and take care. Thank you.